Welcome back, seekers of forgotten lore, to eternal Olympus. The Titanomachy has ended, Zeus is king, and the cosmos has been divided. Hestia tends the hearth, Poseidon rules the waves, and Hades reigns in the gloomy underworld. Now, let's meet the remaining children of Kronos and Rhea, and witness the beginnings of the Olympian family drama. That was the last time anyone ever saw Hades laugh. From the moment he claimed the underworld, all mirth seemed to desert him. He descended into the depths to carve out his kingdom. Though his name is forever linked with death and the afterlife, the entire realm of the underworld also bears his name. Hades also came to symbolize the riches hidden deep underground. The jewels and precious metals mined there, and the priceless crops that germinate in darkness. All reminders that from decay and death, spring life, abundance, and wealth. The Romans called him Pluto, and words like plutocrat and plutonium speak of this hidden opulence and power. Under Hades' command came Erebus, darkness, Nyx, night, and their son Thanatos, death himself. A system of dark, dreadful underground river deities flowed through his kingdom, too Stygian to flow in the open air. The principle was Styx, hate, whose name is still invoked today to describe something dark, menacing, and gloomy. Into her seeped Phlegethon, the river of fire, Acheron, the river of woe, Lethe, the waters of forgetfulness, and Cocytus, the stream of lamentation and wailing. Styx's brother, Charon, was appointed ferryman, leaning on his pole by the banks of the Styx, dreaming of the day thousands of souls would arrive, paying him the price for transport across. The three Erinyes, Furies, earthborn avengers, also made their home within the darkest heart of his kingdom, ready to fly to all corners of the world to exact their revenge on those whose crimes warranted their violent attention. In time, Hades acquired a pet, Kerberos, Cerberus, the Blas, gigantic, snake-tailed, three-headed dog, offspring of monstrous parentage, the original hound from hell, the fearsome and tireless watchdog and guardian of the underworld. He also posted Hydra, another child of Tartarus and Gaia, and sister to Cerberus, at Lerna, a lake that served as one of the entrances to the underworld. The difference between Cerberus, a manageable three heads, a snaky tail, and his sister Hydra offers a striking example of monstrous mutation. Hydra was a many-headed water beast, almost impossible to kill. Chop off one of her heads, and she could grow back 10 more in its place. But despite these zoological atrocities, Hades was, for the time being, a quiet place, ruled over by a god with little to do. Hell needs mortals, creatures that die, to be busy. So we leave Pluto seated on his cold, infernal throne, brooding darkly, as hostile, chilly, and remote as the dwarf planet that bears his name, secretly cursing the good fortune that had given rule of the seas to his hated brother. Poseidon was a very different kind of god. He could be as truculent, stormy, vain, capricious, inconsistent, restless, cruel, and unfathomable as the oceans he commanded. But he could be loyal and grateful too. In common with his brothers and some sisters, he possessed urgent bodily lust, deep spiritual love, and every feeling in between. Like all gods, he was greedy for admiration, sacrifice, obedience, and adoration. Once your friend, always your friend. Once your enemy, always your enemy. And he was ambitious for more than burnt offerings. He always kept an eager, avaricious eye on the youngest of his brothers, the one who now called himself eldest and king. Should the great Zeus make too many mistakes, Poseidon would be there to topple him from his throne. The Cyclopes, just as they had forged thunderbolts for Zeus, now created a great weapon for Poseidon too, the trident. This massive, three-pronged fishing spear could be used to stir up tidal waves and whirlpools, even to make the earth tremble with earthquakes, which gave Poseidon the sobriquet Earthshaker. His intense desire for his sister Demeter caused him to invent the horse to impress and please her. Though his passion for Demeter faded, the horse remained sacred to him always. Beneath what we would now call the Aegean Sea, Poseidon built a vast palace of coral and pearl. He installed himself there with his chosen consort, Amphitrite, a daughter of Nereus and Doris, or perhaps Oceanus and Tethys. As a wedding gift, Poseidon presented Amphitrite with the very first dolphin. She, if truth be told, seems to have been rather colorless and appears in few stories of any great interest. They bore him a son, Triton, a kind of merman, usually depicted sitting on his tail and blowing with bulging cheeks into a large conch shell. Poseidon spent almost all his time pursuing a perfectly exhausting quantity of beautiful girls and boys, fathering an even greater number of monsters, demigods, and human heroes. The Romans called him Neptune. His giant planet is surrounded by moons including Thalassa, Triton, and Naiad. Next among Kronos' children to be apportioned her divine duties was Demeter. Hair the color of ripe wheat, skin like cream, eyes bluer than cornflowers, she was as richly, dreamily beautiful as any of the goddesses. So lovely was Demeter that she attracted the unwanted attention of her brothers Zeus and Poseidon. To avoid Poseidon, she transformed herself into a mare. He turned into a stallion to chase her. The issue of that union was a colt, Arion, who grew into an immortal horse magically endowed with the power of speech. By Zeus, she had a daughter, Persephone, whose story comes along later. Zeus gave Demeter responsibility for the harvest, sovereignty over growth, fertility, and the seasons. Her Roman name was Ceres, from which we get our word cereal. Like Hestia, Demeter is one of the divinities less clear in our minds today as a personality than others of her passionate family. But, as with Hestia, her domain was of paramount importance to the Greeks. Shrines and cults dedicated to her far outlasted those devoted to the more superficially glamorous gods. The one great story devoted to Demeter, her daughter, and the god Hades is as beautiful as it is dramatic, far-reaching, and true. Finally, among the children of Kronos and Rhea regurgitated into the world was Hera. Words still applied to her, which would have maddened her greatly, include proud, imperious, jealous, haughty, and vengeful. She is often saddled with the extra indignity of being called statuesque, Rubenesque, and, courtesy of her Roman appellation Juno, Junoesque. Fate and posterity have been unkind to the Queen of Heaven. She often bears a reputation portraying her as more reactive than active, reactive always to the errant infidelities of her husband-brother Zeus. It is easy to dismiss Hera as a tyrant and a bore, jealous and suspicious, storming and ranting like the very picture of a scorned harridan wife, exacting spiteful revenge on nymphs and mortals who displeased her, perhaps failed to burn enough animals on her altars, or most fatally of all, committed the crime of consorting with Zeus, whether willing or unwilling, she never forgave. But ambitious, snobbish, conservatively protective of hierarchy, and impatient of originality as she certainly was, Hera was never a bore. The force and resolution with which she faced up to a god who could disintegrate her with one thunderbolt shows self-belief as well as courage. She gave the gods gravity, heft, and the immeasurable gift of auctoritas. Her special province was marriage. The peacock and the cow were her associated animals. During the war against the Titans, she and Zeus developed into a natural couple, and it became apparent to him that she was the only one with enough presence, dignity, and command to stand as his consort, and bear him new gods. Crackling with tension, impatience, and distrust, theirs was nonetheless a great marriage. Zeus's ambition for a new era encompassed more than simple power distribution. He envisioned a more enlightened, rationally constituted order than the bloody tyrannies before. He envisioned an assembly of 12 major gods, a dodecatheon. So far, we have met the 6 children of Kronos and Rhea. There was already another deity, foam-born Aphrodite. The moment the Titanomachy erupted, Zeus collected Aphrodite from Cyprus, aware she'd be a great prize if captured by the Titans, so the gods now numbered 7. As the Titans had made Othrys their mountain home, Zeus now chose Greece's highest peak, Mount Olympus, as his new headquarters. He and his gods would be known as the Olympians, ruling as no divine beings ruled before or since. When the gods moved to Olympus, Hera was pregnant. She could not have been more satisfied. Her ambition: bear Zeus children of such majestic power and beauty that her place as queen would be secure forever. She knew Zeus had a roving eye and was determined not to let any other parts of him rove either. First, she would give birth to the greatest of the gods, a boy whom she would call Hephaestus. Then, Zeus would marry her properly and submit himself forever to her will. This was her plan. But the plans of immortals are subject to the cruel tricks of Moros. When her time came, Hera lay down and Hephaestus was born. To her dismay, the child turned out to be so swarthy, ugly, and diminutive that, after one disgusted glance, she snatched him up and hurled him down the mountainside of Olympus. The other gods watched the wailing baby bounce once off a cliff and then disappear into the sea. A terrible silence fell. We will find out what happened to Hephaestus soon enough, but for the moment, let us stay on Olympus, where Hera soon became pregnant by Zeus again. This time she took every care, eating healthy foods, exercising gently, following all precepts of pregnancy. She wanted a proper son, not a runt fit, only to be thrown away. In due time, Hera was indeed delivered of the lusty, strong, and handsome child she had set her heart on. She called him Ares. From the beginning, Ares was a pugnacious, violent, and aggressive boy. He picked quarrels with everyone and thought of nothing but the clash of arms, horses, chariots, spears, and martial arts. It was natural that Zeus, who disliked him from the first, should appoint him god of war. Ares, Mars to the Romans, was, of course, unintelligent, monumentally dense, and unimaginative. For, as everyone knows, war is stupid. Nevertheless, even Zeus acknowledged with grudging consent that he was a necessary addition to Olympus. War may be stupid, but it is also inevitable, and sometimes necessary. As Ares grew swiftly to manhood, he found himself irresistibly attracted to Aphrodite, which god wasn't. More perplexingly, perhaps, she was equally drawn to him. She loved him, in fact. His violence and strength appealed to some deep part of her. He, in turn, grew to love her, so far as such a violent brute was capable. Love and war, Venus and Mars, have always had a strong affinity. To cement her position as the universally recognized Queen of Heaven and undisputed consort of Zeus, Hera felt the need to institute a nuptial feast, a grand public ceremony. Hera's twin impulses of propriety and ambition motivated almost everything. She had been pleased to see Ares falling for Aphrodite, yet she did not trust the goddess. If Aphrodite agreed to make a public commitment to Ares, as Zeus was to do to Hera, then that would make everything binding and official, setting a permanent seal on her triumph. The world's first wedding would therefore solemnize 2 marriages. A date was set and invitations sent out. Presents began to arrive, the most spectacular of which all agreed was a marvelous golden chair addressed personally to Hera. Never had so glorious and gorgeous an object been seen. Whoever the anonymous sender might be, it was obvious, Hera declared, that he or she had the most exquisite taste. Smiling with satisfaction, she lowered herself onto the throne. Instantly, its arms came to life and sprang inwards, enclosing her in a tight embrace. Struggle as she might, she could not escape. The arms had locked themselves around her and she was trapped. The screams were appalling. The Queen of Heaven trapped by a mysterious golden throne. Who could have done this? And how will she be freed? Meanwhile, what became of the rejected child? Hephaestus, cast down from Olympus. Join us next time on Eternal Olympus as we uncover the secrets of the enchanted throne and witness the return of a forgotten god. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and journey with us again into the mists of myth.